Marie-Therese raised the point about women in management and companies actually performing better, and it makes perfect sense, and it's very much aligned with the sustainability side. Um, what, why hasn't it happened? What is the role that could be played within financial services? Could we see something from the pension funds and from the top levels that push this down, because it just makes sense? And then other comments just in general on this movement.
Well, interesting question. Thank you so much. Marie-Therese, I've got some ideas to share with you for sure about getting women to work. But first, I'll answer Stephen's question. Well, first of all, I think last year, Goldman Sachs did a research on how investment funds performed led by women. And all of them outperformed male managed funds. So it's data. So I think connecting that to the feedback that my colleagues already gave, it's not something you should do, like ethically involve other 51% of the population in your decision-making process. It's more than that. We are speaking here about economical added value for a corporate, for the investment fund, for an entrepreneur. We all know diversity leads to better results, to more creativity. So this is for sure, like, it's a no-brainer by now. I think we've got enough McKinseys out there showing us the numbers. But there are different ways and approaches to it. So it's not only let's support women and have these quota. First of all, quotas are good, but at the end, it is about talent and having the right talented person in the right place. I often get emails from VCs and corporates and headhunters saying, we can find these talented women you're speaking about. Well, guys, look better. They're out there. I've got hundreds of them. So please maybe change the approach how you look for them. Quota is not 100% the solution here. On the other hand, we can look at this approach from different gender lens perspectives. For example, in corporate society or a corporate world or entrepreneurial world, you can, first of all, you can go through investing more in women when we speak about entrepreneurial side. On the other side, you can create more products and services that support women. So this is also another way of supporting women. So all men can do that as well. Or you can go, of course, you already spoke, ladies, about that, having more gender diversity at the workforce. We all understand that. Or the fourth gender lens approach could be women and women-led businesses in the value chain. Many corporates have a lot of impact on that. So be more mindful about what kind of companies you're choosing to collaborate with, to buy your services or products for. So the value chain is another approach. So there are different ways. Choose yours and commit to it. So you don't have to have all of them, but choose one and commit to it. And at the end, money is the result. Numbers are there. For example, I recently read a few reports, I think like 17 out of them, showing actually that women tend to invest more in other women. So when you have more women at a decision role, decision position, automatically you will tackle that bias that some men have when they tend not to invest in female-led projects or products. It's just like this blind spot. So other women automatically will invest more in other women, especially 3 times more if it's a female CEO. So you see this kind of solidarity here. So it leads to more diversity in your portfolio when we speak about investments, but that leads to more risk spread as well. And at the same time, more revenue, because numbers show again, if you would invest in women the first 5 years of their career, I mean, the startup of their company, they tend to outperform with 30%. Only male founders. So there is enough data now, I think, so we shouldn't speak only about the social aspect. So it is a must. I think this is a no-brainer. But the other side, just everybody speaks about SDG goals now. I've been to so many conferences in the last few months. All SDG, all sustainability. If you would really dive deeper into by supporting women, you cover 8 out of 17 SDG goals. So just be more efficient. This is like, again, a no-brainer. It's an efficient step, a logical step towards future. So I'm quite positive about it, but it's good that you organize, guys, this kind of conferences to again speak up about it.
Yeah, really good point. And obviously, everybody talks about the global goals, but the global goals, some of the problems that are existing are they're being broken into thematic chunks and then cherry picking to satisfy different needs, right? And we see that on the board, and we see that with, gender equality. But if you don't take it systemically, then if you benefit, 6 of the goals and it's to the downfall of, 10 of the goals, then you have the unintended consequences. And you've seen that, with microfinance and micropayments in Africa, right? And the impact on gender and slavery.
Yeah.
Marie-Therese, you talked a bit about the consequences of COVID, right? We look at, some of the advances that were made on gender equality post wars that were kind of evaporated as soon as men came back into the workforce. Can we maybe, and Marie, because you brought that up, maybe we'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit more about how you see the future post-COVID and some of the unintended consequences, either of that or of some of the leveling up initiatives that are happening?
Yeah, the changes with COVID are surprising in a way, right? There has been this movement of, okay, we had to work from home. Everybody had to work from home. Already there is a discrimination here, but because some people could not work from home. The production people and the shopkeepers, etc. They could not work from home, so they will be excluded from that kind of community anyway. And then, as I said, what people do at home, etc. And the interesting thing is actually that I think that because of COVID, there was a huge technological development. Zoom was improved, Teams developed, and that, in a way, has created a backlash for working from home. Because in the past, when people, for example, women in administration here, they worked from home, they had email, they had telephone to communicate with their boss, with their colleagues, etc. So they were not bound to their computer. With the new technology, everybody has to be online all the time, has to be visible all the time, which destroys actually the whole advantage of working from home. Because you could as well sit in the office and because you have to be, and more control has been installed. Now we are controlling people who work from home much more than we used to. So now we want them to be visible, to be online all the time. In the past, in a way, it wasn't possible and it wasn't done, and people didn't even think of it. So this, the fear of losing control has become much stronger because everybody was working from home. It was not just the few people, and the fear of losing control and power has created this kind of obligation to be online all the time, with the result that women who worked from home because it was easier for them for whatever reason, now they don't see why they should stay at home unless they only work part-time. So pushing people back into the part-time work again as well because of technology. This is a very strange effect, actually, that this technology has had. It has huge advantages, but these advantages can be used in a very negative way to exert more control and keeping an eye on people and not giving them the liberty to organize their day as they would like to, because they are working from home. So that's a very interesting phenomenon, actually, that we are observing. And what's going to happen? Either the women will go back to work, to the office, and women and men, or they will stay at home and have to work part-time only, which is another trap, for women to work part-time. This is, we've been talking about the business case for diversity, and we've been talking about the moral case for diversity, but there is certainly a social case for diversity. as well. And I think Julia addressed this already, you know, the social aspect of this diversity, of what it means in our societies and what needs to change in the mentality and in the frame and in the structure of our society. And then I know, for example, that the women have become more important and diversity has become important. If I understand it well, Julian, you may correct me, there are now investment funds based on diversity.
True.
As they used to be like green funds, right? Now they are based on diversity. And then I was wondering, what are the criteria and how can you control these criteria for diversity? Because is it just numbers or does it also mean inclusion? You know, diversity is the numbers and inclusion is a totally different thing. And that's the tough part. How do you include all these people that are so different and different needs? Do you still have evenings in the evening, meetings in the evening? Or, you know, how do you include all those people? And that is society. That is society. It means that we have to educate our children in a different way. It means that we have to have different kinds of structures, that we have a whole change of mentality. And that's what Marion said, right? This whole evolution of the thinking that is absolutely needed. It's a social case as well.
Yeah, and you know, to your point earlier as well, on the social side as well as the business side, it's a relinquishment of power, right? And that makes people angry, right, on both sides, and creates a lot of the issues that we see. Marion, your thoughts on this subject?
Just on your last point as well, you know, this anger that it creates, or why don't things change faster even though we have all these numbers? I think one part why things don't change faster is that managers, leaders tend to decide in their own interest first, and secondly in the interest of the company or the society. And sometimes that's aligned and sometimes it isn't, but very often you hire for similarity, somebody who kind of, you know, feel similar to how you are, and you don't want to be threatened by someone who seems to be, you know, somewhat different, and if it's just the looks. So I think that is one point with regards to why aren't things changing faster. And also this is obviously a question of a lot of very unconscious biases. It's not conscious discrimination very often. It happens unconsciously. And that boils back down to the point, it's not so much about talking about it, creating awareness about it to some degree, but then the more effective ways of how can you actually deal with the frame conditions or the structures and the processes so that these unconscious biases cannot come to play. So that can be a very interesting approach to that as well. With regards to COVID, I think one thought is, I think there is a lot of effects, and we will find out in hindsight what effects all it has had, and some will be beneficial and others will be more less beneficial, and it will probably sometimes be difficult as well to know exactly what the cause was for certain developments. But one thing that gives me a bit more hope is that COVID for the first time made it much easier to talk about topics like, you know, reacting, adaptability to completely novel new challenges and circumstances. And with that, it opens up the discussion for what are the prerequisites for dealing with this. And it opens up for the discussion that cognitive diversity, as I said, is very important. So it may have some positive effects as well overall in hindsight. And I'm very much hoping, of course, that it will.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're speaking, we're getting some great questions in, and it's really all about that next step of advice on how we can actually administer change, right, and hope. Julia, I'm going to switch subjects a little bit towards that, particularly with your background, and talk about just generally the opportunity, particularly from the entrepreneurship side. One of the startups that you'll see hopefully later today within the accelerator is flying, and she's created a business that promotes investment among women, and focuses on education and tools and resources, because, you know, the opportunity is there. So this company's been, you know, already overfunded. It's growing quickly, and people get it because there's a business proposition there. Can you talk about the role of investment in the opportunity to advance gender equality?
Well, first of all, there is less competition when you invest in female founders. So just statistically, for every $900,000 invested in women, 2.1 million goes to men. So over double goes to male founders. Although the opportunities are out there for female founders as well. We all know most of the decision making in buying power lies with women. So focusing on women economically just makes sense. Investing in them as well. Just give you an example. There are some blind or unconscious like biases with investors, male investors. If a female founder will pitch childcare products, for example, men tend not to even consider it as an investment. While if you will have a female, a woman in the decision-making process as an investor, she will listen and she will see the opportunity. It's just because there is no affinity with the product, so you tend less to invest in it. So this is one of the opportunities to get more decision makers in your panel, in decision-making team, that will lead within 1 year to 1.5 more revenue for the fund, for example. Immediately, it will add. You will have 9.7% more successful exits because of that. So again, it's not as difficult as we think so. It is. It's not at all. Find the right women. I was recently speaking in Frankfurt on gender lens investment, and I was actually surprised how rigid that community was. So most of them are bankers, family offices, men in a costume. And in the last decade, I've been mainly active in startup scene. So it's a totally even other environment, maybe much more risky, but so much alive. So I think we should talk more and see the opportunities, because in some communities, this tendency is much more faster and bigger than in the classical fund managers space. So one way is to get more leaders, look consciously for female founders, and what is the female founder. You can actually see one of the team must be a woman. CEO can be a woman. So there are a few criteria to go through them. On the other hand, I wanted to tap into some comments that ladies gave about getting more women at work, like Marie-Therese, I think Mariette as well. And I'm a mother myself of 2. And what I've seen during this COVID time, I got actually more space to be with my children much more consciously. Yes, I work when they go to sleep, I've got another few hours of mails and conference calls. But I think we'll have to redefine the new normal of being a mother, an entrepreneur, or a manager, or a leader, where you combine that all together. Because my son is 11 and he would ask me like, Mom, but how, is it 9 to 5 that you work? Like, how do you work? Because you work with so many different continents and different time zones. But COVID helped us actually to embrace this digital way of working. And as an entrepreneur, again, I'm not speaking from a corporate perspective, but as an entrepreneur, it gives you much more opportunities. So COVID actually, in our case, opened doors to countries that we'd never consider. Us collaborating with UAE, with Abu Dhabi, we didn't even think about it 2 years ago. But having these collaborations, building these business bridges, Europe getting much more funding for European founders and for founders, female founders in general. So there are also good sides to it. And being a mother gives you much more flexibility in it as well. So in a way, we women need to take our own responsibility of how we, if you have the chance, how you structure your time worked, because Marie-Therese is right. If you go to part-time, you will pay at the end. Think about the pension plans and your salary, you create a bigger gap. So let's not create the bigger gap and think, how can we women create our own way of working, from entrepreneurial way of I'm seeing it, to see like, okay, being digital, having so much support out there for female founders and female leaders, well, let's just take it and leverage it and bring it all together. I'm sure we'll get much more stronger out of this crisis than before we even entered it.
Such good points and some hope there, particularly around investment and returns. I'm unfortunately mindful of time because this panel's raised more questions and we could go on forever, but I think they have a pretty tight schedule. Maybe just quickly with each of you, just a 1 minute on something that you see as positive that's either been done in the past or could be done to continue on the progress of change. Maybe Marie-Therese, if you could start. Oh, you're on mute.
Did you say about the government?
No, what I was saying is just either final thoughts, because we just have a minute left,
Okay.
or some things that you could see that would be low-hanging fruit to move change forward.
Right. Low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit, the women, I would say, get organized. If there aren't enough crashes, if there isn't enough of anything, get organized and do it. Create a business. Create a business and do it yourselves. Don't wait for the government or for anybody else to do it for you. Don't wait for your company to do it for you.
Perfect. Great advice. Thanks. Marianne?
Well, support each other. It's as simple as that. Celebrate each other's successes, support each other, back each other up, reassure each other, because that can go a long way. And be aware that a lot of the qualities and competencies required to solve future challenges are actually, or tend to be, qualities that are stereotypically associated with female qualities, which is not to say that man can't have them too, but we have something to offer, and be proud of that, to be assured of that.
Excellent advice.
Yeah, I think ask more. What I've seen in the last decade, women tend not to ask enough while they are starting a business. They don't ask for help, they don't ask enough money, just enough to survive for another 6 months. Be bolder and speak up. Like Marian said, we have these qualities that are needed in the new world that we are living in. So technology is great, but the emotional intelligence can be beaten by this computer. So use that, embrace that, and speak up. And there is one quote I love, because I work with Google, and sometimes I give workshops for female founders, and the first sentence I always ask them to remember is, ladies, it's not bragging if it's a fact. If you're great, well, speak up. If you did something amazing and you survived the pandemic, or you got even better, speak up. If you've got a great idea, share it. So speak up and ask for help more. There is enough out there. Thank you.
You see that especially with entrepreneurs, that you get so many male founders that are outstanding at blagging. It's all style over substance, and you get so many female-led entrepreneurial businesses that just don't speak up and say it as fact, and that limits them, particularly in the male-driven VC world, right? That exists right now, and it limits the growth of business. I'm going to check with the organizers whether we have time. I think we're probably up against it. Sophia, is that time?
But I would still love to give the opportunity to our audience to answer some of their questions, because we have 2 truly great questions.
Yeah, I saw that. That's what I was going to turn to. So to anyone that wants to jump in, the first question was, what advice for corporates and companies on how to deal with this topic and create more gender equality? What can they do? Some tangible advice to corporates. Anyone want to jump in on that?
Yes, what I would say is examine your structures. Examine, this is also what Marian said, examine your structure, see how things work, and see where there can be a bias and where there can be discrimination. And unconsciously, I agree, most of the time the companies are not starting with the idea, we are going to discriminate women, or we are going to discriminate that group. No, but it just happens, and they're not aware of it. So examine your structures, get feedback, and see what your biases are, and how your structure is actually cheating you in a certain way. How your structures are making you do things that maybe you don't really want to happen in your organization.
Yeah, and that really applies the same to the question on hiring, right? That the Steve Jobs theory of why hire people that think the same as you, right? That really, if you could do a more detailed analysis on your business and business needs and recognize the gaps so that you're focused on that, then you're gonna, I think one of the clear takeaways from this panel is that if you do that and you can find the right talent, then you're going to be a more competitive and successful business, whether you're a corporate or whether you're a startup, right? So, any final thoughts? Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Sophie.
Next
I think
question.
it starts with your leadership. Look at any top. Most of the time it's male dominated. It's very hard to expect diversity in the rest of the company if the top chooses, for example, male top will unconsciously choose for men and hiring men and women hiring women. I'm not sure about women hiring women. There are very interesting statistics also shared by Google that's not always women supporting women when we speak about the corporate ladder. But I think if you've got a diverse, and not only gender diverse, but also culture diverse top leadership team of a corporate or a startup or a scale up, the rest follows automatically. It is our biases. It's something that will go organically. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking part in this panel. I hope we helped in some way to move the needle forward, and really enjoyed having this discussion with all of you, and look forward to a great event for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen.
Sophie, over to you.